All right. Thank you everyone for attending. This is the AI as a learning ally, what students want from faculty. So we have a student advisory board for the Committee on Learning and Teaching called SCOLT here on the SUNY Oswego campus. Many of our students are in the chat right now. And our students, if you would like to introduce yourself and your major, that would be great. And I'm seeing Mackenzie first, so I'll start with Mackenzie.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Mackenzie. I'm a junior anthropology and global studies major.
Jacquelyn.
Hi everyone, my name is Jacquelyn. I'm a senior and I am a wellness management major with a minor in nutrition.
And Michael Daniel.
Hi everyone, my name is Michael Daniel, Mike for short, and my program I should say is Health Promotion and Behavioral Wellness at SUNY Oswego.
Andrew.
Hello, everybody. I'm Andrew. I am a junior biology major with a minor in chemistry.
And Bryan.
Hi there, folks. My name is Bryan. I am a junior majoring in history.
And Abby.
Hi, I'm Abby. I'm a junior health and wellness major with minors in health science and forensic science.
And Delaney.
Hi everyone, I'm Delaney. I am a senior at Oswego. I have a Spanish major, adolescent education major, and then I have a minor in athletic coaching.
And Aiden.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Aiden Wilson. I am a senior. Can't believe it's real. I'm a finance and marketing major with a minor in health science.
And Gabriella.
Hi, I'm Gabriella, but people call me Gabby. I'm a senior and I'm a wellness management and psychology major.
Awesome. And those are our student presenters for today. So let's get started. They're going to be talking about several different concepts. Through our SCOLT meetings, we talk a lot about what students can help us with enhancing as faculty, staff on campus in regards to pedagogy and inclusive teaching. So they're going to be talking about 6 pedagogical tools that they want faculty to know regarding AI in their teaching. They're also going to talk about 5 concepts they want faculty to know about AI, and a discussion surrounding AI and some questions maybe you as faculty have for them as students.
Hi everyone, thank you for being here today. I just want to preface, I've never Zoomed before with my 2 cats, so they might be coming in the background, making an appearance. I can already hear them just causing a ruckus, but we'll see. So today we will be starting off by discussing different things that we've talked about in our meetings about AI use and how we are moving into this new generation and have to incorporate it into our studies. So the first bullet we have down here is to define acceptable AI use in assignments. This should be applicable to every course, asynchronous and in person. I have talked to a professor who is teaching an asynchronous course, and they have found that since it's online, a lot of students have really pushed the buttons with using AI. And so going through the syllabi and having a more structured environment, as I said, my cats, will be very beneficial. So the syllabi is very essential, and this could be done in the first class meeting. So students get a general understanding of what is allowed, and if it is used inappropriately, what are those repercussions looking like? And if professors are stating that they're using the detection devices, and just making everything clear, having clear transparency with students that it's allowed for this reason, this purpose, and not. The third bullet we have here is to engage students in discussions about the reasoning behind these policies. So it's important to have these conversations because we want students and professors to be on the same page and why it would be allowed for certain assignments and not for others. I have taken a course where we used it for the creative aspects, and then there's other courses where you can have it check your work or you use it for grammar. So it's just really important that we have transparency and defined where it is acceptable and where it is not. And that can be done through the use of the syllabi. Thank you.
All right, so the second point that we have here is the transparency of AI use by faculty. So I think that's important that faculty shares with students how they're using AI. So kind of as a guideline for how students should be using AI. When professors say that students shouldn't be using AI, I don't believe that that's really a good thing to do. Sorry, my cat is also here. Specifically because it's a beneficial resource for them. There's many benefits that's going to be talked about later, and I think that they outweigh the risks of the consequences. So second thing here, Jacquelyn kind of already said this, have discussions with your students. Just be open with that. Have open discussions so everybody's on the same page. So I'm not accidentally using AI when you don't want me to, and you are pretty much just know how AI is being used in your classroom. That's just very important. So yeah, that's two. I'm also number 3. So next slide. So teaching AI literacy. I had the chance last semester to teach Honors 150, which is the introductory course to the honors program, and I had to teach a class about AI and how to use it correctly, how to not use it correctly, when you should use it, when you shouldn't use it. So just being open about that in every class, because I know I've taken about 30 classes at Oswego. Almost every single class is a different policy on AI. So making sure that your students are aware of that policy is important, and kind of teaching how you should use it in certain classrooms, how you shouldn't use it in your classroom, if you should even be using it at all in your classrooms is just important in general. And then focusing on effective prompts, it helps not just with AI, but it helps with your research too. Teaching students how to use effective prompts to get what you want out of AI, how to get what you want out of Google, how to get what you want out of academic journals. It doesn't just stay with AI. It's important for all research aspects. It's important for everything. So yeah.
Also, hi, it's me, Gabby again. Teach students how to use AI professionally. So provide them examples of professional use, drafting professional emails, or preparing reports, and just basically demonstrating how the AI tool is used in your discipline, because sometimes there's just things that we don't know how to do. And especially when it comes to emails, I feel like a lot of people don't know how to write a professional email. Like they just know the basics. And I think it would be helpful just showing them how to use that. Because I know recently I had to use AI to help me figure out how to write an email to ask for a fee waiver, because I don't know how to ask for money professionally, and it's also a little bit weird. So that was like a learning experience for me. So it just gave me an outline of like what I could use, and I tailored it for myself. So I found some benefits when it comes to using AI, which is like it corrects your grammar and spelling mistakes because sometimes you don't even see it. Gives you suggestions for you can give it suggestions for tone. So like with the fee waiver, I didn't want to come off as like, oh my God, pity me, pity me. But I wanted to just be like, okay, hey, this is a situation that's at hand and this is what I need, with that, and being polite. You can write emails in bulk because sometimes there's multiple people that you want to send something to. It can be a little bit repetitive trying to find something different for each of them. And also the most important part, I think, is just gaining experience in the task, because once again, sometimes you just don't know how to do something and you just need to learn and just have that one trip. Because I know when I first learned how to how to write emails, I was given an outline on how to do it, and I used it my entire time here at Oswego. So it is a good experience, and overall, just a good outlines. There are some disadvantages, but I don't know if you should consider them disadvantages, because it really gets the student to actually look at what they're asking the AI and to fix it themselves, because sometimes the prompts or the responses that you get are factually incorrect, so they have to actually go in there themselves to check it. So technically they are learning because they have to fix the information that's presented to them and then do their own research in it. So the students are benefiting from it in some way. And also, again, it lacks human emotions because, again, with the fee waiver situation, it was very repetitive and it didn't necessarily give off the feeling that I wanted to give it. So I had to go in and like fix some things so I can send it out to the schools. So not really a disadvantage because the student is still doing the work, but it is still helpful because they have that basis to come out of. So yeah.
All right, that'll be me. So how to balance use of AI with critical thinking. As you all know, Dr. Wosu has a vision for our campus to become, an AI campus. And I think it's important that we try to incorporate that more into, the academic space. So of course, that would include kind of redesigning how assignments are structured, and not shying away from it. I have sat in classes whereas my professor, he encourages us to use it, of course, use it very cautiously, but to at least have a statement in a piece saying, I used AI to help me with X, Y, and Z. That way, we made a claim that we used it. However, it helped our assignment at the end of the day. And then also just using diverse assessment methods. Of course, a fair with AI is that, students could be producing work that isn't theirs. So we're going to have to find different ways to ensure that students are still being assessed correctly. So that could be through group projects, that encourage students working one-on-one rather than be in class. Also just having discussions with students, that way you're testing what they know in that space. And then, bringing back pen and paper tests. Although, yes, it was like dreaded in the past, I think it is something that we might have to look at bringing back just to ensure that students are actually learning the material and not just submitting the work of AI. So yeah.
All right. So on the topic of AI, it's an emerging discussion and it's large, it's broad. So thinking outside of the student lens, how can AI be relevant in different disciplines? So as someone in the healthcare field, just wellness management, I wanted to talk about like how it could be used to help reduce certain labors in the medical field, healthcare. It can transport certain medical items in hospitals, healthcare facilities that could help the nurses or doctors focus more on human needed tasks. So let's say there's a certain file that needs to be transported. A certain AI/robotic thinking outside the box could do that and allow the nurse to not have to worry about that labor. And it could contribute to that reduction in burnout over the years past. For assigning case studies and projects, I wanted to allow everyone to just take some time, to think about this. How can we use AI as students to help solve world problems, and just drop some ideas in the chat. But the idea that I wanted to use was
Mike did say he was having some freezing, so it does about 10 seconds. Any other students want to pop in there for him?
work towards their, sorry, somebody say something.
Oh, you're good, Mike.
All right. So yeah, just help the client work towards their healing process. So just take some time to just think about that, like say like 2 minutes, nothing too critical. You just want to brainstorm real quick and see where everyone's heads are at.
You broke up a little there, Mike, so we didn't get that whole thing. If you want to just re-explain number 2 to us.
All right. So I was saying, for the sake of time, let's just brainstorm some ideas on how we as students could use AI in the real world and solve some issues. And the example I used was using AI for disease screenings and speed running that process. So, sorry, yeah, connection issues.
No worries. So now we're going to get into the top 5 concepts that the students want faculty to know about AI, things that they value and they also want to know more about in the process. And Mackenzie, do you want to speak to this one?
Yeah, so it's always been the case, really, that students use time-saving or effort-saving measures on their schoolwork. I think what's really important about AI, though, is just how little transparency there is lately, in the sense that it can and has been used to write entire papers, for example. And to bullet point A, it obviously raises questions about the fairness in that learning. This is something that I think could be resolved with a bit more attention to the actual policy making regarding AI. We talked a little bit about it in the beginning, but from personal experience, I would say that some of the difficulty I've had in the past with professors giving AI policies is that it's really something that isn't very often enforced, but it takes the form of either do whatever you want with it without any sort of guiding line, or don't do it at all. But obviously, as like a fact, as like not a fact checking, but a spell checking or like a grammar checking sort of thing, it obviously has its uses. Um, and that's why it can sort of help in leveling that playing field. But I think it's very important that we actually talk about it instead of just saying either we can't use this at all, or saying everything's on the books. We need to actually be having this conversation, because that's how we change the university landscape for the better, rather than just letting it change it for us.
Bryan or Delaney, do you want to add to this?
Just I'll cover it a bit more since I have slide 2 after Mackenzie, but Mackenzie said it really well in, you know, that we can't be scared of it. Actually, you'll see on the next slide, I put like a phrase like we have to face, you know, this new emergent thing. There we go. AI is here to stay in terms of learning and in terms of our professional lives. And it's a tool that is out there, as Mackenzie put on her slide. It is free, you know, all these companies really want people to use it. And, you know, there's no escaping it. And so you can't really shut in yourself and say, oh, you know, there's other less techie or so avenues. It has to be a real component of the way that we as students and you as faculty, you know, help learn and grow together. And so, like, as we've been saying throughout this presentation, you know, rethinking assignments, using tools responsibly, you know, the ethics and the prompts that you're giving it do matter, as well as, you know, the output that you're generating. Next slide. Thank you, Dr. Harris. I found this really cool article recently by a professor at Emory who was being interviewed by some PhD students, and some of her work, you know, really dives into using algorithms as a way, you know, to it's basically like using Control F on your keyboard, but not just like searching for appearances of words, but, you know, using that as an avenue for critical thinking. And she says that the knowledge of techniques like, you know, text mining, using algorithms is poorly distributed, because a lot of academics see themselves as, oh, you know, I'm just gonna, you know, give a talk at this conference, or, you know, publish a paper, you know, who's the what if, the so what question is, you know, who's going to really read your interesting work? Who's going to make use of it if no one knows it's out there, and also it's super, super long? We can't really, you know, do all that. Next slide, please. Really quick. Dr. Harris?
Yep, 1 second. It clicked on the photo there and it went to
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I put
a larger
the-
photo of that.
Ah,
There we go.
yeah, sorry.
There you go.
There we go. I've been playing around with personal AI myself regarding the thesis research that I've been doing, and I know that, you know, this is a way that, you know, all these companies like Google want like professors to organize their stuff as well. And I was like, this is kind of, you know, creepy, and, you know, the voices sound very, very real, but these are ways that, you know, we can help students study better, understand better, with the help of technology instead of running away from technology. And I will preface that I did try this on my personal account because Oswego's student accounts, they won't, CTS has blocked it, so Campus Tech doesn't let us use it. But here are some screenshots, and you can see 3 bullet points I put there really quickly. Human creation of sources. So I'm the person who's putting in stuff into this computer to analyze, what are the important highlights that I want to get to, what are like the things that I need to, review, and it does it fairly accurately. There's some summaries. It can generate like an FAQ, like here's the top 5 things you need to know, and generated conversations. Like you can talk with a chat bot, or it generates a podcast for you to listen to. And I was like, but it's out there, we should face it, and maybe it gives you a new lens to think about, okay, this is how I can present this to my class or to other educators. So yeah, thank you.
So when it comes to different statements that could be put on the syllabi, it's always important to make it clear what your expectations are. But also, we know each department is different in what the uses of AI are and what should be allowed and shouldn't. So to make these expectations easier to understand for students, we recommend departments making their own set of expectations so each department knows, hey, this is what we can use, and this is how we're going to use it, but we know it might be different for a different class that you have, depending on what area of study you're in. But students should know that AI is used for enhancement and not replacement. So it's used to help build your ideas instead of just replacing it altogether just to get the work done. And then, yeah, I think that's it.
That's it. Okay.
Okay, so telling students they can't use AI needs to change, and not in a way of that's totally unacceptable, just in a way that I think of a teenager that wants to do something really bad, and you tell them not to do it, they usually end up doing it anyways. We know that advanced technology has become a driving force in our everyday lives. There's benefits to that, there's positivity to that. We're very grateful that we have the access that we do nowadays. We cannot escape the growing influence, but we can embrace the positive uses and the benefits of the specific technology in our own education. It's suspected that AI is going to be used in the workforce as an assistant, not to replace people, which I think is a very good example of what AI can do for a person. Because again, we don't want AI to completely take over a person's thoughts and none of the thoughts be specific to the person, but it is like a reference for that person, especially in the bigger worlds, which we will be going to after we graduate college. If it's included in the workforce, we want our students to be prepared for that. The reality is students will use it no matter what, but let's make sure that they're using it correctly. This is why we ask that there's transparency in the usage between the professors and the students or the faculty members. We obviously want our students to be thinking on their own still. I'm in the education field as well, so I understand we want our students to be creating ideas on their own. However, there is aspects to AI that are very beneficial, especially with like creative aspects and organizing things, graphing things. It's a very useful tool that if a student knows how to use correctly, can be beneficial to them without having it take over their own thoughts. So we're asking for boundaries that can be shared between the professor and the students, just so that there's a balance, because at this point, if you ask students, do you use AI? Most of them will say yes. I know I have plenty of peers that may use AI, even though in the syllabus it's stated, please do not use AI, or it's completely banned, or there's repercussions from it. And although I agree that it cannot be used to a certain extent, that's why we would just like the transparency aspect to be talked about. Because again, when we're just pushing it away and we're trying to act like it's not a thing that is completely changing our lives, in the media, in every like social media aspects, in our everyday lives, especially after the pandemic, I feel it's gotten a little bit, it's increased in its involvement in our lives. But we should not fear its presence, but learn how to leverage it. This also goes for the equity gaps and equal playing fields and jobs. It's an AI tool that's available to everyone. When you get to college, I think it's interesting to see the different gaps between students, their backgrounds, where they come from, what they know, and the resources that they have. There are students who may not know how to write, how to even fill out an envelope. That could have been like from not being able to take a FACS class, resources, things that the school offered them. We want them to know that this can be a tool that can help them in their everyday lives. It is, at a certain extent, it is equal playing field for most people, especially when people are going to use it no matter what. And we just want to make sure that the students are doing what they can to help themselves while also helping their own knowledge and the equity gaps that we can fill in the future. So the students who don't know AI, how to use AI effectively may have a huge advantage over students who don't. Again, they can finish assignments faster, produce higher quality work, and get better grades, but that's not necessarily saying that they learn more if they are not producing the work themselves. So it's really not just about the access to AI, because if you have a computer, if you have a phone, you will most likely have the access to AI, but it's learning how to use it well. And that's where we're asking our professors to be transparent about the usages of it, so that we can have inclusive classrooms and so that the equity gaps can be filled. Again, because college is a huge learning experience for every single person involved, and many students come from different backgrounds, and we want them to all have the same experiences, be able to learn just as much as any other student.
So right now we're just going to open it up to kind of a discussion and also questions for the students on their thoughts and any of these concepts that they've presented to you as faculty and staff. So we'll open it up right now. Yeah, Jordan.
Hi. I wanted to thank you all so much for your presentation. It was really interesting to hear all your different perspectives, and I appreciate the time you guys have taken. I was wondering how much you would say, it seems you all have a very kind of thoughtful perspective on how AI can be integrated into the classroom, and you might not have the exact numbers, but how well is this reflected kind of across the larger student body? Because I think if most students are kind of on the same page with us, thinking about how AI can help them and they can still learn, instead of maybe trying to see how AI can help them not have to do the work. So I guess from each of you, or whoever kind of feels like they might have a perspective, how you all have really thoughtful perspectives, but how kind of broad and wide might those perspectives be shared?
Yeah, can I sort of get into my perspective on that?
Sure.
So I guess the way I see it is that there is some thought put into it, but unfortunately, I don't know if it's just the circles that I run in, there is a lot more how to use AI as work saving rather than as a tool. And I know that's what tools are generally for, but I think this is why clarity has been such a point that we're hammering on, that the clarity in a policy is something that could really prevent people from just sort of using it to get out of doing work that they should be doing. Because in my own personal experience, when I see people using AI, particularly like generative AI in their classwork, it's as a substitute for an actual search engine or as something that will write the sentence for you. And I, in a couple of classes, have tried to say, well, that's okay, and then move on to sort of paring down what's being said in those generations and actually turn it into your own work, obviously. But I do think policymaking is the area where you sort of need to make that push in order to get a lot of students to think about it in a more thoughtful way.
Yeah, Delaney?
Hi, okay, so when we were discussing this presentation, we all kind of had the same perspectives of people are using AI all around us. But many had different reasons for using it. I never really used it until a teacher that I was working with actually told me that that's a way that she comes up with thematic units for our Spanish classes. And that's something that was like, oh, this is something that I struggle with when like my creativity is low and I can't somehow put the pieces together. And she explained that if you have three different themes that you need to come up with a broader theme, that's a tool where AI can use some help, and it's not completely giving you the instructions and the lessons for how you're going to go about it, but it's just giving you a theme, and then you can base your ideas off of it. However, I didn't know about that aspect of the AI until my teacher told me. So I think that that's just again like a point that we're trying to get across is that I don't think many students know what they can do with AI, and how much potential it holds when they are just typing in something, a whole prompt, and then asking them to complete it for them. Um, which unfortunately, when I hear my friends talk about work or, like let's say they see me doing work and they're like, you've been taking a while with that, like why don't you just use AI? So I know that people are just using it for a time saver to complete that work. Um, do I know if if the teacher, I don't know exactly how the professors might be communicating that with them. But that's why we just want the transparency and the clarity with it all, because there are certain things to learn from it that are beneficial. But when people don't know the potential of it, that's when they go to using it in an easier way that's not making them think as hard, where we still want to have active learning present within the individual that's using it.
Other questions from faculty? Or any other talking points that the advisory board wants to add? I know, Andrew, one thing that was mentioned by you in our meetings was wanting to know kind of what faculty use it for. Do you want to talk a little bit about kind of your interest in that? And
Of course. So, obviously, as Delaney just said, her professor was using AI to complete assignments. I have no clue if my professors use AI at all. So I think it's important for us to not really important, but I think it'll be interesting if those professors share how they're using it to build their lesson plans, how they're using it to build assignments, how they're using it just in general. And I think that will be just kind of used as an example by students of how you should be using it. So explaining how faculty is using AI can be used as guidelines for us as students as to how we should be using AI.
Great, thank you. Other questions from faculty? Lynn?
Yeah, I'm really interested in this discussion, and I'm very glad to hear your perspectives on this because the perspective we as faculty get are usually, to be honest, the students who use it to cheat. Um, so and that's distressing, right? And I've said this to my students all the time. I know Bryan has heard this before, probably Gabby has as well, that I'm not a police officer, I'm a teacher, and I like to teach. I don't want to catch people cheating. That's not my job. I find myself being a teacher. So I wonder, if any students can comment on the ethical uses of AI. I know it burns tons of energy. That's a big concern now because of climate change. I know one of the slides, I don't remember which student presented it, but one of the students presented a slide where they put their entire paper into AI, which I have a lot of problems with, and I will never do because then who knows who's going to take that. Um, and I have concerns about, intellectual property and ethical issues. I mean, have those things come up, and what ethical intellectual property issues have come up for you as students that we as faculty need to know about?
Great.
I'll answer this. Most students that I have heard about using AI use it to cheat, and obviously that's not what we want. But when I'm looking at that and they're using it to cheat, they're cheating themselves as much as they are cheating on those assignments because they're not learning what that assignment is there for them to learn. So obviously we don't want them doing that and all that, but most of us have this perspective that we're using AI as a tool more than cheating. And I'd like to think that this board is full of students that are very, I wouldn't say they use AI correctly more than students who obviously aren't. And I have people that I live with that every single one of their assignments they just put into AI. And I look at him and I go, "Are you actually learning anything?" He's like, "Not really." I'm like, "Okay, so what are you gonna do when you go into the real world?" Like, and he starts thinking, and I changed his mind, and he started to do his assignments like that. So I don't know if that kind of answers your question, but that's kind of where I'm at with that.
Bryan, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, certainly, and I have had a Dr. Blanchfield's class before, just this past semester. Um, in the couple slides that I had produced, one of them I was before I had used Google's Notebook LM. I was reading a bunch of different CNET and reviews from YouTube about like how exactly, and glancing through some of the terms of use, and at least there was this comparison made between that type of stuff versus ChatGPT. Of course, lots more people know ChatGPT than Notebook LM, but ChatGPT runs on, I think, a data set prior to 2020 or 2021. So and of course all of the harms of, oh, this is fair use. Well, it's Silicon Valley trying to tell you to shut up. Anyway, I do believe, like, oh yes, there's a lot of stuff we need to balance between, okay, this technology is using a lot of servers and going to pollute the environment, but also it's going to save us a lot of time, and that's where, as we were talking earlier about clarity and tools, they're supposed to help you. And let's see, what was that other concern? Intellectual property and privacy. I think that at least from the stuff that I do as a researcher, as a historian, I think that, like, the stuff that I want to talk about considering AI, it's it's not as like, okay, there's like in terms of medicine and science, like, oh, you're going to probably harm people by a computer giving you wrong information, or like legal advice, or but for me, I think, okay, as long as I know this is the session that I'm putting stuff in, and then I think Google deletes all that, I hope. I'm looking at the privacy policy again. But those are the things that I've been like thinking about being more clear. So yeah, it's always, you know, in your hands about, okay, it's up to me and my decision, and I'm just gonna look at the things and be informed myself before I go into anything. Yeah.
Mackenzie?
Yeah, and we got a little bit into this in our discussions towards the end of it, where I almost feel like the ethical concerns of this is something that we should obviously be teaching to students in college, but it becomes a real issue that I don't know if we solely in academia have any sort of sense of being able to solve, in that I would like to think that college prepares a lot of people for life in the outside and working environments. And the issue is those environments aren't selecting for people who are using AI in the most ethical way. They're selecting for people who are using them in the most efficient way. It I I almost wonder what we could possibly be doing, and to make these ethical concerns something that is actually cared about society-wide, simply because that's just not how the job market works. They don't want someone who only uses AI in the most ethical way. They want someone who uses it in the way that can get them a report on the table as quickly as possible.
Delaney, then Aiden?
So I've actually been reading into a lot of the ethical practices of it, and I've seen that it's been causing pollution, like from the servers, which I don't think a lot of people knew about until recently, which I do find is a big issue, especially on the environment. However, I do think it goes back to the individual themselves, because when someone's using it, they should have like good intent with using it, which cheating or using it to write an entire paper that's not written by themselves is not good intent. Um, I also have found that some people that have used it, it does not produce correct information the entire time. So someone in my class used it, and they asked to like summarize a movie or something that we were supposed to watch, and it actually gave false information. The entire thing was just wrong. Um, so that's where, as an individual, you can't depend on it, which I think is a big, a smart way to think about it too. You can't depend on AI, rather than just use it as a tool. Again, though, I think when, you know, as a professor, as a teacher, if you're looking at a student's work and it does not seem like their own, that's when you can detect that it is AI generated. I also have heard though that some of people's own work has been detected as AI, even though it is like their own words and their own thoughts. And that's an issue as well, just because that, it may, for someone to put in that work and that thought, it's very upsetting that, the professor would accuse them of doing something that they weren't doing at all. And so the ethicals are very confusing, I believe, about this. But again, I think that's why we just are pushing for like the right usage of this technology. But people are not going to know how to use it correctly if no one is telling them how to.
Aiden, and then our last point will be from Gabby.
Yeah. To add on to Delaney's point, I agree with all of your points that there are a lot of ethical issues involved with AI. And I've even had instances where I wrote something and I uploaded it to like Brightspace, and Brightspace is like, this has a lot of AI in it. So unfortunately, it's like AI is already being pushed on us, is already integrated into the school system. So now it's kind of like difficult to, kind of fight against it when it's like already there. Specifically with that example, because I wrote that work, but it's telling me that AI is telling me that AI wrote this, but I wrote it. So I think that's where we're gonna have to like kind of screen students before to see like their level of, writing before then, to understand, to see if, the policy that's integrated, if it's like correct or not. However, I do know that raises concerns with like online classes, because, if my class is only digital, that means you could technically use AI for the entire thing. And I would never know, because I never really saw what you wrote on your own. So it's I think as time goes on, AI will evolve to have, better policies. But all of the concerns are correct.
And Gabby?
This is about the factual incorrectness part of it. I feel like a lot of people don't really realize how incorrect things could be when using AI, because they just use it as a search engine. Like, we'll be having a problem and I have this friend that'll just be like, okay, let me ask ChatGPT, and it's just like, you could have Googled that, but that's not the point. And so I think one thing that you could do is basically show students how incorrect it can be, because I know I had a professor, she had a whole entire assignment dedicated to showing students like, look, this is why I asked ChatGPT, and then this is for them to figure out like where it went wrong, and just like to give that student that perspective of saying like, look, this isn't giving you the answers that you think it would give you. And I think that would like deter people from actually using it, because they're going to be like, okay, I have to actually put in the work for it, or just use it more responsibly because they don't want to get caught, or they just don't want to deal with a professor that has to say that like, oh, this isn't right, you did something wrong, or deal with the academic consequences of it. And also, I am curious about how faculty uses AI to detect the AI usage in their papers, because I did have a friend who's going through like the academic consequences to using AI when she wrote a paper all by herself. So it's just like she did all this work in a paper, and then you guys, not you guys specifically, but professors are accusing her of doing something that she didn't do, and now she has to go through this whole entire process. So it's just like, how do you use it? And then, yeah, just how to use it.
Does any faculty on the line want to give a go to Gabby's question of how they use it? Or how they use it to detect, if they do, or what's their process? I guess for me, I open up as a conversation first with the student. And normally that has nipped it in the bud. Because normally students will be like, yeah, I did, and then it moves forward with an open conversation about, how to use it or how not to use it. But again, you're right, as what you guys have all said in your presentation, with us not having a policy at this point and every professor having a different, type of expectation, it's very important that all of us as faculty are very clear in what we expect, and also laying those ground rules for how we are going to detect if your work is considered AI. What does that process look like for you as a student? So I think that's an important addition that you mentioned, Gabby, for us to think about as faculty too.
I know you guys were asking a question pertaining to how it's used, pertaining specifically for faculty. I'm going to take it two different ways. Number one, I teach as an adjunct, and I'm currently teaching a section of GST 104 that's fully online, because we are now admitting many more students that are online. And the content for GST 104 is not my area of expertise. So I used it to help me build the content for the course. I had the outline. I had a lot of materials from my friends in Excel, but I also needed to create a voice. So I used it for that, number one. In my role at the college, I'm an instructional designer, and I manage a team of instructional designers, and we are using it to help us think about how to help faculty. So thinking about, for example, how faculty can use it to create full courses, thinking of the learning outcomes, thinking about the materials that they might use. Yes, you still have to go and you have to make sure those resources exist, because again, as I put in the chat, there's a lot of hallucinations within the various tools of AI. So I don't know if that helps you guys, but I will tell you this. I very much appreciate what you're saying, because you're having me think, because I only teach a 1 credit course, and I'm touching students that are first semester, thinking about, okay, how can I put a small module in to help them start thinking about it and encouraging them to use it. Even in self-reflections, I have them write in my course. So thank you.
Well, thank you everyone for coming. That is our time for this session. This student group is also going to be presenting on some enhancing pedagogy strategies in the next session as well. So hope to see you there.
Thank you.